Hello and welcome to another Bitsbox unboxing video. Today we're going to be looking at the Covenant DSC support vessel. Based on the Infinite Succor from the last voyage of the Infinite Succor. Succor? Graphic novel, wasn't it? Yeah, it was a graphic novel. Sorry, it's been a while since I read it. Yep, it's quite an interesting design. Now, interesting thing about this ship is those domes are actually biodomes. The Covenant, rather than just keeping refrigerated stock or whatever the UNSC use, actually have massive hunting preserves, mainly for the Sangheili, or elites, if you prefer, to go around and hunt their stuff properly like the gods intended. So, it's also quite an interesting ship, aesthetically speaking, so we'll have a look at the models in a minute, which are in this little bubble wrap pack. The usual pack of tokens and stat sheets, which we'll look at in a minute, and 4 formation bases, which you're getting 4 capital ships in this box, so that should tide you over. But you get the precise amount you need, and not much more, but not less. So, let's have a look at these models. There is a package inside this package. And gently shuffle these. So, let me just have a look. It looks like I should probably get the instructions out. It looks like we have 2 main parts here. 1, 2, what's this? 3 of those. Okay, so we have our first wing, if you like, and that would fit nicely on there. Now it looks like you'll have to do a little bit of cleaning up to make sure those fit together. Oh, actually no, that seems to fit together alright, but you might need to do a little bit of cleaning up just to make sure it looks nice and neat and flush. So if we just hook that in there. Oh no, actually we're not going to get it assembled because of the flash, but you can see there that would, oh there we go, don't have a flash prop anymore. That would fit nicely there. Okay, so these are quite a simple build, perhaps a little bit fiddly, and they're going to need some cleanup, but you can see it roughly starting to come together there. I'm not sure what this is about. And there's your mounting base there, so it's actually holding upside down. It's meant to be held up like that. Now for a rough reference, none of these have got, oh, all of these have got flash on them. That's a little bit annoying. So you clip in there, be a good boy, and we're just going to be a little bit rough with the flash there. It's quite flexible flash. There we go. Let's just see if we can. Imagine modeling purists are probably weeping right now over the rough treatment I'm giving to this resin. Very gently remove that. But yeah, that gives us a very rough idea of what it's going to look like. Ultimately, it's only 3 parts, though there are some frilly bits that go in the back here, which is what these are about. Yeah, actually that's roughly how they go, though they are 2 separate parts connected by a little bit of flash, so you'll be cutting them off and then assembling it. Let's see, I'll just hold it like this for now because that's how it's going to go. Size reference, here is a SDV Corvette, so you can see it's a good twice the length of that, roughly speaking, though not significantly bigger actually, especially not in terms of bulk. And if we compare it to a CCS, it's about the same. No, actually it's going to be a little bit shorter, actually quite noticeably shorter, and it's going to be outbulked, but it's not quite as slim in terms of silhouette as the CCS. So it's a fair sized model, not too big, not too little. We'll have a look at how the stats reflect it. So in our usual pack of dreams, we get many tokens, 2 sheets of tokens, with boarders, with bombers, fighters, and vulnerable and damage markers. The usual, basically. We get our stat cards, we'll go to them in a minute. We get our build instructions, which is literally stick those 2 wing bits together, and then stick it to that, and then stick your little spiny bits in the back there, and then you're ready to go. I'll have a look at the formation base in a minute. You only get 1 sheet for reference. So, interestingly, that's blank on that side. Okay, so there we go. There's the DSC stats. So we'll start with the vanilla DSC support ship. Now it's quite an interesting one. You'll notice, first things first, continuing the trend of recent releases, it is even cheaper than the last one, though not in a way that makes it overpowered, I feel. 95 points, yes, that does mean you now have a Covenant equivalent to the Marathon. It is also build rating 2. However, compared to the Marathon, it is slightly tougher, 764 rather than 663. It has an extra hangar, it has 2 boarding craft extra, and I think an extra security detail. I don't have to remember the Marathon security detail off the top of my head. Defense arrays are free rather than titanium armor free. Now, I'm trying to think of the nearest equivalent. It's easier to compare UNSC ships to UNSC ships because they only have 2 weapon systems, whereas the nearest equivalents I can find to the DSC are naturally the CPV destroyer or the RCS cruiser. I think the RCS is probably the most similar because it is another build rating 2 ship, but they are very different. Now the DSC has more defense arrays but less armor. It has more hangars and more boarding craft but less security detail. They both move about the same speed. The RCS is a good 25 points more expensive. It gets more plasma cannon, but it doesn't get plasma torpedoes, but it does get a plasma lance. And ultimately, this is very much an apples to oranges comparison. There isn't really anything in terms of capital ships like the DSC, because all of the capital ships thus far have had beams or lances. This one is just cannons and torpedoes. It's like an oversized Corvette. So actually probably the best reference for it might be the tri-formation of SDVs, but even then it's much more expensive and much more durable. But we'll have a look at that. These might actually be a really good buddy for it. So, compared to the tri-formation of SDVs, yeah, again, this is an apples to oranges comparison. Like I said, it's really tough to compare Covenant ships to each other because they are much more varied than UNSC ships are, if I'm honest. Comparing it in a vacuum then, in terms of just itself as a solo ship, just like the Marathon, this allows you to make your own little Covenant bricks. You could have 2 of these and 2 formations of corvettes to give yourself a nice healthy pool of cannon and torpedo. They would be cheap. Unlike the UNSC brick, it's not really the big old monster of long-range combat. In fact, it doesn't really have long-range firepower. Another interesting trend is Spartan giving Covenant capital ships lots of plasma torpedoes. We saw it for the CPV, now we're seeing it for the DSC, on top of, them generally getting cheaper. Now, I imagine the question a lot of people are asking is, isn't this better than a Marathon because it's tougher, it's got defense arrays, it's got more hangars and boarding craft, it costs the same, it doesn't have the same speed, first off. Now, it's up to you whether that's good. The Marathon can cover 10 inches if it needs to. It doesn't have any long range firepower. You know, it has, well, the Marathon has 8 heavy Mac dice, which is what makes it so scary, and 7 missile dice. So it has slightly less firepower, but plasma weapons and short range compensate for that for the most part. But they are very short range. You're going to be within 10 to 12 inches to really make that count. So overall, it's, in this form, quite an interesting ship. It's cheap, it brings a decent amount of firepower, and you know, you couldn't go wrong just getting one or two of these in a battle group, throwing in some corvettes, and it's going to be a relatively cheap unit that you can just roll up, try and get close to some stuff, board the crap out of it. It'll dish out wings pretty well. And on top of that, actually, yeah, because hangars of 3 for each DSC, so that's 6 if you take 2 of them, plus 2 corvettes gives you 8 hangars total. So you can put 2 bomber formations out of this. Bring something that's got carrier action, you can just keep them coming. So yeah, it's a support ship, really. Funny that. It doesn't really do battle itself, but if someone else cracks open a UNSC ship's armor, this can follow up pretty well. It can roll up and board stuff, although I wouldn't really put zealots aboard it because it is still pretty fragile. One good Mac volley will put an end to it. But ultimately it is, you know, it's a pretty good support ship. It brings a decent amount of everything, and it's really cheap, and you can take a lot of them in a battle group. Yeah, funny, that is a really good support ship. It's kind of its job. Now we'll start with the good old vanilla supported version. So what do you get for that? If you go supported, you get interesting. You get no additional torpedoes, unusual, but you do get 2 additional plasma cannon dice, and another hangar, another security detail, and another damage on the last track, and obviously your build rate goes up by 1. Your defense arrays and your point defense go up by 1 as well. Oh, actually I forgot to mention, this ship's a Labyrintine, because a lot of it is giant hunting preserves full of carnivorous creatures that the Sangheli hunt. So yeah, it's kind of hard to board because of that. Funny that. But yeah, the support version doesn't increase the plasma cannon dice, and it is a 20-point upgrade as standard for supported. Now we then go to the reinforced version. Suddenly jumped up 2 plasma torpedo dice and 1 plasma cannon dice to give you 10 of torpedo, 9 of cannon, 5 defense arrays, 6-point defense, more hangars, 5 hangars, and a damage track of 766. So it's quite a consistent damage track in that regard. It doesn't really degrade. Again, it's actually 435 points. Bearing in mind you're approaching CCS levels of cost, or a well-equipped CPV. Or actually, it's the same cost as a supported CPV, more or less, if I remember rightly. It's pretty good. Again, it's a really good support ship. That's kind of what it does. So this would support even harder than the previous one supported, because it gets more dice to attack with, more hangars, and is just generally more durable. That one might actually be a decent chariot for some zealots. Maybe. I'd still consider drawing far away from it, but with a defense array value of 5, it's pretty durable. Now, we'll have a look at what happens when you stick ADPs next to one of these. So for the first one, we gain a small increase, I think. We'll compare support versus escort, actually. Let's just try and get this both in frame. So you don't get nearly as many plasma cannon arrays, only a tiny upgrade if at all. Yep, 1 extra plasma cannon dice, which is interesting because ADPs don't have plasma cannons, but we'll ignore that. much more plasma torpedoes though. You bump up to a tasty 12. Your point defense goes up by 1. Your defense arrays stay the same. They're just as good on either ship. Hangars don't go up, nor the security detail stays the same. So yeah, they seem to be about the same in terms of ability, and they both cost the same. Really, the question is, do you want more hangars, or do you want more point defense and more torpedo dice, or slightly more cannons? Yeah, that's a toughie. And then we get defended variant. Again, very mediocre 7 plasma cannon dice, but a very tasty 14 torpedoes. It also stays at build rating 3, which means it stays nice and cheap in terms of how you can cram them into battle groups. But you get a point defense value of 6, so that stays the same. Defense array value of 4, so that doesn't really change either actually. So not much upgrade in that regard, but you get cloaking systems and +1 on your lash damage track, because that's always a nice bonus. In fact, cloaking systems and 2 torpedo dice is about all you really get for that 20-point upgrade. Oh, and +1 on your last damage track, which I'm going to be honest is a very good deal. You can now, if you haven't noticed, defendant variants of uncloaked ships gain cloaking, which is super scary because you can now make your CCSs cloaked, and we've wanted that for a while. But yeah, we'll go into the cloaking in the ADP escort video. But that's the DSC. It's an interesting ship, definitely. And as I said, it is mainly just a cheap capital ship for the Covenant. It's no more, no less. That's what it's there for. It's also a very pretty model. It's one of the more obscure and strange looking UNSC, those silly humans. One of the more strange looking Covenant ships, but with the right paint job. I mean, I'm really looking forward to painting the biodomes personally. Seeing if I can get a sort of a nice blue tinted silver, so it looks like there's an atmosphere behind it, and it's sort of intra reflecting the light, and all sorts of crazy stuff you can do with the paint jobs and that sort of thing. You might need to crack out the hot water and bend these into shape by the look of it, just to be sure, but I think that's just the bits of flash catching on stuff. As far as the miniature, I love it. As far as the rules, I'm definitely interested in trying it. It fills the same rules as the RCS in a way, in that you can make bricks with it. So funnily enough, now actually the Covenant can have more options for cheap battle groups than the UNSC have, because the UNSC can only really do it for the Marathon. But there you go. Another strong release for the Covenant, though thankfully this release for the UNSC wasn't as middling as the previous. So yeah, it's much more balanced this time round in terms of what each group got. Anyway, that was me reporting on the DSC support vessel. Thank you for watching.